The alarm screamed through the small cargo ship. Red lights flashed across every wall and ceiling. Taewon Kim gripped the pilot's chair as his vessel shook violently. Something was very wrong with the engines. Hana, what's happening back there? He shouted into the communication system. Hana Park's voice came back tight with worry. The main engine just died. I mean, completely dead, and the backup system is failing too. We have maybe 10 minutes before we lose all power. Taewon felt his stomach drop. They were in the middle of nowhere, floating in a dangerous asteroid field far from any major space route. His ship, the Morning Star, was small and old. It carried medical supplies to human colony on the edge of known space. The job paid poorly, which was why bigger ships never took this route. Can you fix it? Taewon asked, though he already knew the answer. Not out here. We need a proper repair station. This is major damage. Taewon, something burned out in the core systems. Taewon looked at his screens. The nearest station was 3 days away at normal speed. They would never make it. He pressed the button for the emergency distress signal. A simple message went out into space. Human cargo vessel in distress, engine failure, need immediate assistance. Hours passed. Taewon and Hana sat in the dark, cold cabin. They had shut down everything except life support to save power. 3 ships had passed through the area. All 3 had ignored their distress call. Why won't anyone help? Hana asked quietly. She was wrapped in a thermal blanket, her breath making small clouds in the cold air. We're human, Taewon said bitterly. We're nobody important, and this route doesn't make money. Why would anyone waste time helping us? Hana was his oldest friend. They had grown up together in the same colony. When Taewon bought this old cargo ship, she had volunteered to be his engineer. Now he worried he had led her to her death in the cold darkness of space. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be stupid, Hana replied. We're not dead yet. Another hour passed. Then the ship's computer made a sound. Another vessel was approaching. Taewon pulled up the identification scanner. It's a Chitauri ship, he said, surprised. A big one. The Chitauri were insect-like aliens. They had hard shells, multiple arms, and faces that humans found disturbing. But more importantly, the Chitauri were famous merchants. They cared about profit more than anything else. They had a saying in their language that translated to charity is the hobby of fools. They won't help us, Hana said. Everyone knows Chitauri only care about money. The communication system crackled to life. A scratchy, clicking voice spoke in galactic common language. Human vessel Morning Star, this is Merchant Captain Vexera. I have received your distress signal. Taewon grabbed the communication device. Yes, we need help. Our engines are dead. We're stranded. Silence for a moment. Then Vexathara spoke again. I see. What payment can you offer for rescue and repair? Taewon's heart sank. He looked at Hana. They both knew the answer. But we can't pay much. We're carrying medical supplies. Our profit margin is very small. More silence. Taewon could hear clicking sounds in the background. Vexatharo was probably calculating whether they were worth saving. We have about 2,000 credits, Taewon said desperately, and the cargo is worth maybe 8,000, but we can't sell it. People are waiting for those medicines. 2,000 credits would not even cover the fuel I would burn to help you. Vexathara said flatly. Please, Hana said, leaning toward the communication device. We an LT Uncan GT LL die out here. Silence stretched on. Taewon closed his eyes. This was it. The Chitauri would leave them here just like the other ships had. Then Vexathar's voice came back. I am doing something very stupid. Prepare your ship for towing. I will pull you to the nearest station. Taewon couldn't believe it. What, really? But we can't pay. I know what you can pay. Vexathura interrupted. I am choosing to help anyway. Do not make me change my mind by talking more. Within an hour, the massive Chitauri vessel had attached heavy cables to the Morning Star. Taewon watched through the window as the alien ship slowly pulled them out of the asteroid field. It took 2 days to reach the nearest station. During those 2 days, Vexathara spoke to them only once to provide basic instructions. She seemed almost angry that she was helping them at the station. Vexathura did something even more surprising. She paid for the engine repairs herself. The cost was enormous, nearly 15,000 credits. When the repairs were done, she refused to let Taewon see the bill. Why are you doing this? Taewon asked when he finally met Vexthor face to face at the station. She was tall with a dark green shell in forearms. Her large, multifaceted eyes watched him without any expression he could read. I do not know, Vexthor said honestly. My people will think I am foolish. Perhaps I am curious. You humans are strange creatures. Consider this an investment. Perhaps one day this debt will be worth something. I will pay you back. Taewon promised. I don't know how or when, but I will. Humans don't forget kindness. Vexthor made a clicking sound. That might have been laughter. Do not make promises you cannot keep. Small human, we will likely never meet again. The galaxy is very large. Before Vexathor could leave, her ship developed a small problem. A computer system malfunctioned. Hana, who was skilled with many types of technology, offered to look at it. I know Chitauri systems, she said. I studied them in training. Please let me help. Vexatha allowed it, though she seemed skeptical. Hana worked for 6 hours straight, crawling through the Chitauri ship's complex computer network. Finally, she found the problem, a corrupted data node that was causing cascade failures. She replaced it and reconfigured the system. Your computer should work perfectly now, Hana said, tired but proud. Vexathura tested the system. Everything worked smoothly. You have skill, she admitted. This is barely adequate repayment for my assistance. It wasn't really adequate repayment at all, and everyone knew it. But Taewon understood what Vexathara was doing. She was giving them a way to feel less indebted. It was a kindness wrapped in harsh words. As Vexathar's ship prepared to leave, Taewon stood at the station window and watched. Hana stood beside him. I meant what I said, Taewon told her. I will repay her somehow, even if it takes my whole life. I know, Hana said. That's why I'll help you do it. They didn't know it then, but that moment would change the galaxy, because humans remember, and when humans remember kindness, something remarkable happens. Taewon pulled out his personal data recorder. He began to record everything about this day. The date, the location, Vexathara's name and ship identification, every detail he could remember. This story needed to be preserved. What are you doing? Hana asked. Making sure we never forget, Taewon said simply. Making sure everyone knows what she did for us. Morning Star left the station the next day, engines running smoothly. Taewon delivered his medical supplies to the colony on time, but he carried something else with him now, a debt of honor and a determination that one day somehow he would repay the Chitauri merchant who had saved his life. In the vast darkness of space, Vexthara's ship jumped to faster than light speed, heading toward her next business deal. She had already dismissed the incident from her mind. It was a minor loss, an uncharacteristic moment of weakness. She would be more careful in the future. She had no idea that she had just planted a seed that would grow into something far larger than she could imagine, because she had helped a human, and humans never ever forget. 20 years passed like water flowing through space. Taewon Kim was no longer a struggling cargo ship captain. He had worked hard, made smart decisions, and slowly built a reputation. Now he was a trade coordinator for the Terran Commerce Guild, helping organize shipments between human colonies and alien worlds. He had married Juan Choi, a brilliant woman who worked as a human ambassador. They had a comfortable life on Earth in a small apartment overlooking the ocean. But Taewon kept one thing from his old life in a special place on his desk, a data file containing every detail about the day Vexthara saved him. You still check on her? Juan asked one evening. She had found Taiwan at his computer, looking at public trade records once month. Taewon admitted, I track her career. She's done very well. She's now one of the senior trade council members for the Chitauri Collective. Ji-Yoon sat beside him. She knew this story well. Taewon had told it to her on their first date. 20 years and you're still watching? I made a promise, Taewon said. Simply, I told her I would repay the debt. I just need to find the right way. She probably doesn't even remember you, Ji-Yoon said gently. Maybe, but I remember her. That has to count for something. Taewon wasn't the only human who remembered. He had shared the story. Everywhere he went, he told it to other ship captains, to merchants, to students. At the Navigation Academy, Hana had done the same. The story of the Chitauri merchant who helped when no one else would had spread through human space like wildfire. There was something about the story that touched humans deeply. In a galaxy where most species saw them as weak and unimportant, one alien had chosen kindness over profit. Children learned about Vexthara in schools. The story was told in bars where spacers gathered. It became part of human culture. Meanwhile, the galaxy was changing. Humanity was growing, but quietly, human colonies spread to new worlds. Human ships traveled farther. Human diplomats built relationships with dozens of species. Other aliens saw this but didn't worry. Humans were pleasant enough, but they had no great military power. They weren't economically dominant like the Chitauri. They weren't feared like the Krell Empire, but the Chitauri Collective was facing a serious problem. A species called the Vin had been causing trouble. For years, the Vin were aggressive and militaristic. They had powerful ships and strong alliances with other major powers in the galaxy. The Vin had decided that the Chitauri Collective controlled too much trade. Slowly, carefully, they began to strangle Chitauri business. They convinced other species to boycott Chitauri merchants. They blocked important trade routes. They made it illegal for Vin-allied worlds to do business with the Chitauri. The Chitauri government tried to negotiate. They offered better prices, more favorable terms. Nothing worked. The Vin didn't want negotiation. They wanted the Chitauri to become weak and dependent. Vexthara sat in the council chamber on the Chitauri home world. Around her, other council members discussed the crisis. The numbers were bad and getting worse. In 20 years, maybe less, the Chitauri economy would collapse completely. We must consider military action. One council member clicked. Impossible. Another responded. The Vin have 3 times our military strength and their allies would join them. We would be destroyed. Then what do we do except slow death? The council had no good answers. They were trapped in an economic war they couldn't win and a military conflict they couldn't fight. After the meeting, Vexthara returned to her personal office. She reviewed the situation from every angle. The Chitauri were known for being smart business people, but this problem had no business solution. They needed help. They needed allies, but who would help the Chitauri? They had spent centuries being cold and transactional with every species they met. They had no real friends in the galaxy, only business partners, and business partners abandoned you when things went bad. A message appeared on her communication system. It was marked as coming from the Terran diplomatic corps. Vexthara almost deleted it. Without reading, humans were minor players in galactic politics. What could they possibly want? But something made her open the message. It was short and simple. Dear Council Member of Exitara, my name is Taewon Kim. We met 20 years ago when you saved my ship. I have been following the situation with the Vin. If the Chitauri Collective is interested in assistance, humanity would like to help. Please respond if you wish to discuss this matter. Vexthara stared at the message for a long time. Taewon Kim, she had to search her personal records to remember the incident. Yes, there it was, a small human cargo ship engine failure stranded in an asteroid field. She had helped them for reasons she still didn't fully understand. She had paid for repairs. It had been expensive and foolish, and now 20 years later, this human was offering help. Vexthara clicked her mandibles in confusion. Humans were strange. She had always thought so, but this was beyond strange. That incident had been minor. She had barely thought about it since. Why would this human remember after 2 decades? She checked the human's current position. He was indeed a senior diplomat now, not unimportant, but still. Humanity was not a major power. What help could they possibly offer against the Vin? Curiosity 1. Vexthara composed a reply. I remember the incident. I am surprised you do. What assistance do you believe humanity can provide? The response came within hours. We would like to send a delegation to discuss options. We believe we can help with your Vin problem. We ask only that you hear us out. Vexthara brought the message to the council. Most members were skeptical. Humans, what can they do? They have no military strength. This is a waste of time, but the council was desperate. They agreed to receive the human delegation. If nothing else, it might provide information about human capabilities for future reference. 3 weeks later, Vexthara waited at the main spaceport on the Chitauri home world. A human diplomatic ship landed. It was a nice ship, well-maintained, but not impressive by galactic standards. Taewon Kim walked down the ramp. He was older now, with gray in his hair. Beside him walked a human woman who carried herself with confidence. Juan Choi, his wife, and a senior ambassador. Behind them came several other humans in diplomatic uniforms. Taewon stopped in front of Vexara. He gave a small bow, a human gesture of respect. Council member Vexthera, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I confess I am curious, Vexther said. 20 years is a long time to remember such a small incident. It wasn't small to me. Tywin said simply, you saved my life. And my friend's life. You paid for repairs when you didn't have to. In human culture, that kind of kindness is never forgotten. Jiun stepped forward. Council member, we know about the Vin situation. We believe humanity can help. Vexithara led them to a private conference room. When they were seated, she got directly to the point. Speak honestly, what can humanity possibly do? Against the Vin, you have a small military. You are not economically powerful. I appreciate that you remember an old favor, but sentiment does not win conflicts. Tywin and Jiun exchanged a glance, then Tywin leaned forward. You're right, we can't fight the Vin. Militarily, we're not strong enough, but we can do something else. We can organize. And organize what? Vexthera asked. Everyone the Vin have hurt. Jiun said the Vin aren't just targeting you, they've been bullying dozens of smaller species for years. They've been building an economic empire through intimidation. Every species they've threatened, every world they've blockaded, every merchant they've harassed. Those are all potential allies. Those species are all weak individually, Vexera pointed out. Together they are still weak, maybe. Tywin said, but we humans have learned something in our history. Sometimes they, small and weak when they work together, can stand up to the big and strong. We want to help build that coalition, and we want the Chitauri to be part of it. Bixathar was silent. It was an interesting idea, but it seemed impossible. Why would these species trust each other? Why would they trust you? Because humans are very good at building trust. Jiun said, we've spent the last 20 years building relationships across the galaxy. We've helped when we could. We've been fair in our dealings. We've made friends. And because, Tywin added quietly, everyone knows the story of the Chitauri merchant who saved 2 humans 20 years ago. That story has spread everywhere in human space. It's taught in our schools. Our children know your name, Vexther. When we tell other species that we're helping you, they'll understand. They'll know that humans repay their debts. Vexithara felt something she rarely experienced. Genuine surprise. You have told this story for 20 years. Everyone has told it. Tywin said, it's part of who we are now. For the first time, Vexithura began to understand something important about humans. They were strange creatures indeed. The Chitauri Council chamber was filled with clicking and agitated movements. Vexithara had just presented the human offer to the other council members. The response was not positive. This is absurd, council member Rickton declared. We should accept help from humans based on a 20-year-old favor. This is emotional thinking, not business logic. What other options do we have? Bixath asked. The Vin are destroying us slowly. Our economic models show complete collapse within 2 decades. No other major power will help us because helping us means opposing the Vin. Another council member added, the Vin are too powerful. Any species that helps us becomes their enemy too. Exactly my point, Vexther said. Humans are offering to help despite this risk. Should we not at least explore what they can do? The debate continued for hours. Finally, the council agreed. to send Vexathara to Earth as their official representative. She would negotiate with the humans and report back, but the council made it clear they expected the price for human help to be very high. Meanwhile, on Earth, Tywin faced his own difficult meeting. The Terran Council, the governing body for all human space, was not convinced. Let me understand this clearly, Counselor, Park said. She was an older woman with sharp eyes. You want humanity to risk antagonizing the Vin and their allies to help the Chitauri, a species that has never been particularly friendly to us. Yes, Tywin said simply, based on the fact that one Chitauri helped you personally 2 decades ago. Yes, another counselor shook his head. Tywin, we respect your service, but this is a significant decision. The Vin have powerful friends. If we help the Chitauri, we make enemies. Jai stood up. She had been sitting quietly, but now she spoke with passion, with respect. Council, I think we're missing something important here. This isn't just about one favor. This is about who we are as humans. The council members turned their attention to her. Jiwon continued, every species in this galaxy sees kindness as weakness. They see debts as chains to escape. They see loyalty as foolishness. But we humans are different. We remember when someone helps us. We value those who show mercy, and we repay our debts. That's a beautiful sentiment, Counselor Park said, but it's not practical policy, isn't it? Jiwon challenged. Think about what message we send if we ignore this debt. We tell every species in the galaxy that human gratitude means nothing, that our promises are empty, that helping a human is worthless, because we'll forget about it when it's inconvenient. She looked around the room. But if we help the Chitauri now, we send a different message. We show the galaxy that humans remember that helping a human even once, even 20 years ago, matters. We become the species that repays its debts no matter the cost. The room was silent. Another counselor, a younger man named Lee, spoke up. Ambassador Choi makes a good point. We've been trying to build our reputation in the galaxy for decades. This could define us or destroy us. Someone else muttered. Tywin stood beside his wife. I understand the risk, but I also know this. Vexathara didn't have to help us. She gained nothing from it. She lost money. Her own people probably criticized her, but she did it anyway, and now she needs help. How can we call ourselves honorable if we turn away? The debate went on for 2 more days. Finally, the Terran Council reached a decision. They would help the Chitauri, but on one condition. The Chitauri had to formally request assistance. This wasn't about humans imposing themselves. It was about answering a call for help. When Vexthara's ship arrived at Earth, Tywin met her at the spaceport. Personally, she emerged from her vessel, expecting formal negotiations in a government building. Instead, Tywin greeted her warmly and led her to a simple outdoor garden. This is irregular, Vexathar said. Should we not meet in an official location? We will, Tywin assured her, but first, I wanted to talk to you as the person you helped, not as a diplomat. They sat on a bench overlooking a lake. Earth's sun was setting, painting the sky colors that Vexathara found strange but beautiful. 20 years ago, you saved my ship and my crew, Tywin began. You said it was an investment. You said maybe one day the debt would be worth something. I remember, Vexathara said. I was being sarcastic. I did not actually Expect repayment, I know, but humans are strange creatures. Taewon smiled. We take promises seriously, even sarcastic ones. Especially sarcastic ones made while doing something kind. He pulled out a data pad and showed her something. It was a school textbook used in human education systems. There was a whole chapter about the incident, about the Chitori merchant who helped when no one else would. Your name is known to every human child. Taewon said, you're part of our stories now, part of our culture. When you helped me, you helped all of us. In a way, you showed us that kindness exists in the galaxy. Vexthara felt something unfamiliar. It might have been emotion, though. Chitauri didn't experience feelings the same way humans did. This is unexpected. The Terran Council has agreed to help. Yu Taewon continued, not because we want something in return, not because we're looking for an advantage, but because you helped us once and that matters. That's what it means to be human. The formal negotiations began the next day. Vexthar expected the humans to demand payment, favorable trade agreements, or political concessions. Instead, they presented a detailed plan for countering the Vin's economic blockade. Jiwon led the presentation. We've been studying the Vin situation for months. We believe the key is not to fight them directly, but to undermine their coalition. She displayed a map of the galaxy, showing Vin influence. The Vin have built their power by intimidating smaller species. They've made dozens of enemies. Our plan is to unite those enemies into a defensive economic coalition. We've tried forming alliances before, Vexithar said. Other species are too afraid of the Vin. They're afraid because they're alone. Another human diplomat said. His name was Yangsu Park, and he was head of something called the Economic Warfare Division. But if we can show them they're not alone, that changes everything. Yangsu explained the strategy. Humans would serve as coordinators and intelligence gatherers. They would identify every species the Vin had hurt or threatened. They would help these species communicate and coordinate. They would share economic data showing Vin vulnerabilities. We can't beat the Vin militarily, Yang Su admitted, but we can make their economic blockade too expensive to maintain. We can turn their tactics against them. Admiral Donghun Lee spoke. Next, he was commander of the Terran Defense Fleet. Our military role will be limited but important. We'll escort Chitori merchant ships through disputed space. We won't fire unless fired upon. But our presence will force the Vin to make a choice, back down or attack human ships. They would declare war on humanity. Vexithara said. Maybe the Admiral replied, but we don't think they will. The Vin are bullies. They pick on targets they think are weak and alone. They don't know much about human military capabilities. Our ships might be small, but they're advanced. The Vin won't risk a war with an unknown enemy when they can simply back down. Vexithara studied the plan carefully. It was clever. It avoided direct confrontation while still applying pressure. It used humanity's strengths, organization, coordination, and diplomacy rather than trying to match Vin military power. This could work, she admitted, but why would other species trust humans to coordinate this coalition? Because we have no territorial ambitions, Jiwon said. Because we've spent 20 years building genuine relationships. Because we're not asking to lead, we're offering to serve. And because everyone who knows humans understands that we're doing this to repay a debt. That makes our motivations clear and trustworthy. You would risk war for us, Bixatha said. Slowly, for one small favor from 20 years ago, yes, Tewin said. That's exactly what we would do, Bixathara. Return to the Chitauri home world with the human proposal. The council was skeptical but desperate. They agreed to formally request human assistance. Within weeks, humanity began its campaign. Human diplomats reached out to dozens of species, human intelligence. Officers gathered data on Vin economic activities. Human military ships began organizing into escort groups. Galaxy watched with fascination and confusion. What were these humans doing? Why were they risking so much for the Chitauri? A Vin ambassador named Kels confronted Taiwan at a neutral space station. The Vin was tall and intimidating with armored skin and sharp claws. You are making a mistake, human, Krellick said. The Chitauri are not worth this risk. They care nothing for you. Tewin looked up at the much larger alien calmly. You're right, the Chitauri as a whole don't care about us, but one Chitauri helped us once. One Chitauri showed kindness when no one else would, and that's enough. That's what it means to be human, Krellick laughed. You would risk your species for such a small thing. It's not a small thing to us, Taiwan replied. Every child in human space knows the story of Vexathara. We teach our children to remember kindness, to repay debts, to honor those who help us. If we abandon the Chitauri, now we abandon who we are, then you are fools, Kellick said. Maybe, Tewin agreed. But we're fools who keep our promises. The news of this conversation spread across the galaxy. The galaxy had never seen anything like what humanity did. Next, Youngsu Park sat in a command center on Earth, surrounded by dozens of screens showing economic data from across known space. His team worked around the clock, tracking every VIN trade route, every economic partnership, every financial vulnerability. We've identified 43 species that have been economically damaged by VIN policies. One of his analysts reported, most are small independent worlds. They have no military power and limited economic influence individually. But together, Yangsu asked, together, they represent significant trade volume. If they coordinate, they could disrupt VIN supply chains considerably. Youngsu smiled. This was exactly what he needed. Send diplomatic teams to each one, explain what we're doing, offer to help them organize. The diplomatic outreach began immediately. Human ambassadors traveled to dozens of worlds. The message was always the same. The VIN have hurt you, they've hurt others too. Together we can stand up to them. Humanity will help coordinate and provide intelligence. We ask nothing in return except your cooperation. Many species were skeptical at first. Why would humans help for free? What was their real agenda? But Jiwen and her diplomatic team had an answer. They simply told the story of Vexthara. They explained that humanity was repaying a debt. They showed that human motivation was clear and honorable. We're not trying to build an empire, Jiwen explained to a council of 3 small species. We're not trying to control you. We're trying to show the galaxy that kindness matters, that helping someone even once creates bonds that last. Slowly, species began to join the coalition. First a handful, then Dozens, human coordination made it possible. Human intelligence showed them. Where the Vin were vulnerable, human honesty convinced them to trust. Meanwhile, Admiral Dong Hyen Lee prepared the Terran Defense Fleet for its role. His ships weren't large or heavily armed by galactic standards, but they were fast, advanced, and well-trained. Our job is simple, he told his captains. We escort Chitauri merchant vessels through disputed space. We don't shoot first, but we don't run away either. We show the Vin that attacking Chitauri ships means attacking human ships. The first test came 3 weeks after the operation began. A Chitauri cargo vessel was traveling through system the Vin claimed to control. 3 Vin warships moved to intercept. Then 5 human ships appeared. They took up position around the Chitauri vessel. The lead human ship broadcast a simple message: this vessel is under Terran protection. Any attack on it will be considered an attack on humanity. The Vin ships circled, their weapons powered, but not firing. For 10 minutes both sides waited. Finally the Vin ships withdrew. It happened again and again. Each time human ships appeared to protect Chitauri merchants. Each time the Vin backed down rather than risk war with an unknown enemy. The Vin leadership was furious but confused. Who were these humans? Why were they so committed to protecting the Chitauri? And more importantly, what were their military capabilities? Vin intelligence tried to find out, but human military technology was surprisingly difficult to understand. Humans had developed some innovations that other species had overlooked. Their ships were small but sophisticated. Their weapon systems were unusual. Their defensive capabilities were better than expected. The Vin realized they didn't know enough to risk a direct conflict. But the real damage came from Yang Su's economic campaign. It was brilliant and brutal in its simplicity. Human analysts had discovered something important. The Vin economy depended on certain key resources from specific systems. They had built their entire strategy around controlling these resources and their trade routes. Yang Su organized the coalition to target these dependencies. Species that produced these resources suddenly refused to trade with Vin partners. Alternative trade routes opened up, bypassing Vin-controlled space. Prices shifted, markets moved. The Vin tried to respond with force, but their military was spread thin, protecting their existing holdings. Every time they concentrated forces in one area, problems emerged elsewhere. And everywhere they turned, they found humans not fighting but coordinating. Humans shared intelligence with coalition members. Humans helped negotiate new trade agreements. Humans provided economic analysis that showed exactly where the Vin were vulnerable. Woman named Sujin Kang, a human intelligence officer, became particularly important. She had spent years studying Vin society and economics. She understood how they thought, how they made decisions. The Vin see themselves as apex predators. She explained to a coalition meeting. They're used to intimidating smaller species, but they're actually quite risk-averse when facing unknown dangers. They don't like fair fights. She helped develop a strategy of uncertainty. Human ships appeared and disappeared unpredictably. Coalition members used human intelligence to strike at Vin interests in unexpected ways. The Vin never knew where the next problem would come from. Within 3 months, the Vin blockade of Chitauri trade had weakened significantly. Within 6 months it was starting to collapse. The economic pressure was too great, and the military risk of fighting humanity was too uncertain. At a major galactic gathering, the Vin ambassador Krellick confronted Jiwon again. This time he was less arrogant. You have made your point, Ambassador Choi, he said stiffly. Perhaps we can negotiate a settlement. The Chitauri and the coalition members would welcome negotiations, Jiwon replied politely. But the terms must be fair. No more economic bullying, no more blockades. You ask us to surrender our strategic position. We ask you to trade honestly instead of through intimidation. Is that so unreasonable? Krellick's eyes narrowed. Why? Why would humanity risk so much for the Chitauri? They are not your friends. They care nothing for you. Guy smiled. I've been asked that question many times. Now let me tell you the story of a young human cargo captain named Taiwan Kim. She told the story of the stranded ship, of Vexithara's unexpected kindness, of the debt that had never been forgotten. Krellick listened, his expression unreadable. This is all because of one small favor? He asked. When she finished, from 20 years ago. Yes, Jiwon said, that's all it takes. One act of kindness toward a human, and we remember forever. We teach it to our children. We build it into our culture. And when the time comes, we repay it with everything we have. Krelzik was silent for a long moment. Then he said something surprising. You have taught me something, Ambassador. I thought I understood all species in this galaxy, but humans, you are different, dangerously different. Dangerous how? Jiwon asked. Because you make kindness powerful, Krellick said. You make mercy strategic. You turn debts into weapons. No other species thinks this way. Perhaps that's why the galaxy needs us, Jiwon suggested. Negotiations began a week later. The Vin agreed to end their blockade and their economic intimidation. In exchange, they received fair trade agreements and a promise of non-aggression from the coalition. It wasn't a total victory. The Vin remained powerful and influential. But they had learned an important lesson. Humans were not a species to ignore or dismiss. On Earth, Taiwan watched the negotiations on a screen. On a set beside him, she had remained his friend through all the years, though she now ran her own successful engineering company. We did it, she said quietly. We repaid the debt. We did more than that, Taewon replied. We showed the galaxy who we are. Admiral Lee's fleet returned home to celebration. Youngsu's team received commendations for their brilliant economic strategy. Human diplomats found themselves suddenly respected and sought after across the galaxy. But the biggest change was in how other species viewed humanity. Before, humans had been seen as pleasant but unremarkable. Now they were seen as something else entirely. A species that remembered, a species that repaid its debts, a species that valued kindness and loyalty above immediate gain. Other species began to recalculate their relationships with humanity. If one act of kindness could trigger such a massive response, what else might humans do? What other debts were they tracking? Who else had helped a human somewhere, sometime, and didn't know they had created a bond that would last forever? On the Chitauri home world, Vexithara attended a ceremony in her honor. The Chitauri government, which had once criticized her for her foolish charity, now praised her for her strategic investment in human relations. She found this deeply amusing. she had helped those humans 20 years ago on impulse, maybe even against her better judgment. And that impulse had saved her entire civilization. A young Chitauri approached her after the ceremony. Council member Vexithura, I have a question. The humans say they repaid your kindness, but surely they did much more than what you did for them. You paid for some repairs. They organized an entire galactic coalition. Is this not disproportionate? Vexthara clicked her mandibles. Thoughtfully, I think humans see it differently. To them, it's not about exact value, it's about the principle. I helped when no one else would. I showed them kindness in their moment of need. That to humans is priceless. But why? Because Beaksethur said, slowly understanding something profound. Humans are the only species in the galaxy who truly understand that small acts of kindness can echo across the cosmos. The Vin blockade collapsed completely within 1 year. The economic coalition that humanity had organized proved too strong to overcome. The Vin signed a treaty promising fair trade practices and agreeing to respect the sovereignty of smaller species. But the real story wasn't about the Vin's defeat, it was about what happened next. Species from across the galaxy began to look at their past interactions with humans differently. A merchant from a species called the Trell suddenly remembered a human trader who had helped her 10 years ago when her ship had broken down. She had forgotten about it. Now she wondered, had that human told the story? Did other humans know? What did it mean? She sent a message to human space asking if anyone remembered the incident. Within days she received a response. Not only did humans remember, but the story had been recorded in something they called the Kindness Archive, a vast database where humans tracked every act of kindness they had received from other species. The trail merchant story was there, complete with details. The human who had been helped was now a senior logistics coordinator. He sent her a personal message. Thank you for your help all those years ago. If you ever need anything, please reach out. Humans don't forget. Stories like this began appearing everywhere. An engineer from the Krell Empire had once shared his lunch with a hungry human student. The student was now a professor who still talked about that kindness in his classes. A diplomat from a minor world had once provided shelter to a group of stranded human travelers. Those travelers had been telling that story for 15 years. The galaxy began to realize something astonishing. Humans had been quietly keeping track of every kindness, every favor, every small act of mercy they had received, and they were preparing to repay all of them. Historian named Barim became fascinated by this phenomenon. She was young, brilliant, and curious about human behavior. She began researching what she called the Vexthara effect. It's not just about one story, she explained in an interview that was broadcast across human space. It's about how we humans process kindness. When someone helps us, we don't just feel grateful in the moment, we carry that gratitude forward. We tell the story, we share it with others, we teach it to our children. And when the opportunity comes to repay it, we act with full force. Her research showed something remarkable. After the Chitauri incident, applications to join human diplomatic and intelligence services had increased by 300%. Young humans wanted to be part of this, to help repay debts and build relationships. Human schools added new courses on galactic cultures, focusing on understanding and appreciating other species. Human merchants began offering preferential rates to species that had helped humans in the past. Human scientists shared research freely with species that had been kind to human researchers. It was a complete reorganization of priorities. Other species pursued profit or power or territory. Humans pursued the repayment of debts and the cultivation of relationships. 5 years after the Vin crisis ended, Vexthara returned to Earth. One final time. She was older now, ready to retire from her position on the Chitauri Council, but she had one more thing she needed to understand. Tywin met her at the same garden where they had talked before. He was older too, with more gray in his hair, but his smile was warm and genuine. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I wanted to see you one more time before you retire." "I have questions," Vexar said. "Questions that have troubled me for 5 years now." "Please ask them." They sat together, watching Earth sunset across the lake. Vexithara clicked her mandibles slowly, gathering her thoughts. "How did you mobilize your entire species over such small debt?" she asked. "I have studied your response. It was not just your government, it was your merchants, your military, your scientists, your children. Everyone participated. How is this possible?" Tywin smiled. "Let me show you something." He led her to a nearby school. Classes had ended for the day, but some students remained for activities. Tywin brought Vexithara to a classroom where a teacher was conducting a history lesson. The teacher, a woman in her 40s, was telling a story to about 20 young children. Vexithara recognized the story. It was about her, about the day she helped the Morning Star. And so the teacher said, "Council member Vexithara paid for the repairs, even though it cost her a lot of money. And GT, she didn't have to do this. No one would have blamed her for leaving, but she chose kindness over profit." "What do we learn from this?" A small boy raised his hand. "We learned that kindness is valuable." "Yes, what else?" A girl spoke up. "We learned that we should help others when we can, even if it's hard." "Excellent. And what do we do when someone is kind to us?" All the children answered together as if they had memorized it. "We remember forever and we find ways to repay it." Vexithara felt something she couldn't quite name. The teacher had spotted them and walked over. "Council member Vexithara, what in honor, children, this is the hero from the story we just discussed." The children crowded around, asking questions, expressing thanks for something that had happened before they were born. They treated Vexithara like a celebrity. After they left the school, Vexithara was quiet for a long time. Finally she spoke. "You didn't just remember, you made it part of your culture. You teach it to every generation." "Yes," Tywin said, "that's what humans do. When something matters to us, we preserve it, we pass it down. Your kindness isn't just history, it's alive in every human child who learns the story." "But why? Why make so much of one small thing?" Tywin stopped walking and turned to face her. "Because it wasn't a small thing to me and Hannah. We would have died out there cold and alone. You saved us. You gave us our lives back. How can that ever be small? Other species would have forgotten." "We're not other species," Tywin said gently. "We're human and humans. Remember." He took her to one more place, a memorial garden that had been built 5 years earlier. At its center was a beautiful sculpture made of metal and crystal. It showed two ships in space, one small and damaged, one large and strong, connected by cables of light. Plaque beneath it read, "In honor of Council Member Vexthara of the Chitauri Collective, who taught humanity that kindness can cross the stars. May we always remember, and may we always repay. This is for me, Vexthara asked, for you and for what you represent." Tywin said, "You showed us that even in a cold galaxy, compassion exists. You gave us hope, and you gave us a story that defines us now." Bexa reached out with one of her forearms and touched the sculpture. "I did not do it to be remembered. I did not do it to gain advantage. I simply did it. I know." Tywin said, "That's what makes it perfect. You acted from your heart, not from calculation, and that's the kind of kindness humans value most." They stood together in silence for a while. Then Vexthara asked her final question. "What happens now? You have repaid your debt to me. You have done far more than I ever did. Are we finished?" Tywin laughed. "Finished? No, Vexatha. Just beginning. You're not a debt anymore. You're a friend, and humans value friendship even more than gratitude. I do not understand the difference. A debt can be paid off," Tywin explained, "but friendship is forever. The Chitauri will always have human support now, not because we owe you, but because we choose to give it. That's what your kindness created, not an obligation but a bond." Bexa processed this. In Chitauri culture, relationships were transactional. You traded value for value, and when accounts were balanced, the relationship ended. But humans saw it differently. For them, kindness created permanent connections. "Your species is very strange," Vexthar said. "Yes," Tywin agreed cheerfully. "We know." Before Vexthara left Earth for the last time, she met with Juin and several other human leaders. They presented her with a gift, a small data crystal. "This contains something we think you should have," Juin explained. "It's a complete record of every time your story has been told over the past 25 years. Every classroom lesson, every speech, every conversation. We thought you might want to know how far your kindness has traveled." Vexthara accepted the crystal. Later on her ship, she accessed its contents. There were millions of entries, millions of times humans had told the story of the Chitauri merchant who helped when no one else would. She found videos of children performing plays about the incident. She found songs composed in her honor. She found academic papers analyzing the long-term diplomatic effects. She found personal journals where humans had written about how the story inspired them. One entry particularly struck her. It was from a young human woman who had been going through difficult times. She had written, "Today I learned about Vexthara. If an alien I'll never meet can show such kindness to strangers, then maybe there's hope for all of us. Maybe kindness is the strongest force in the universe. I'm going to try to be like her." Vexthara had to stop reading. Something was happening to her. An emotional response that Chitauri rarely experienced. She had helped two humans 25 years ago. She had expected nothing. She had received everything. Back on Earth, Boring published her comprehensive study. She called it the Vexthara Doctrine, how one act of mercy changed galactic politics. In her conclusion, she wrote, "Humanity has discovered something that other species have overlooked. Kindness is not weakness.